Finding the perfect tactic for your team on Football Manager can be tough, especially if you've progressed long into a save and then you find yourself with a team that is stacked with great players and wonder kids that are coming through the youth academy. Well, don't worry. In this video, we're going to create a tactic together, and I'll show you my thought process and how I go about creating a tactic when I've progressed far into a save. The guidelines are pretty simple. I like to look at the club expectations first to determine a style of play. That's if I want to play a direct style of play or a possession-based style of play. At this point, I can do whatever I want, but it helps to just have an idea about what the fans and the board do expect to see on the pitch. Another group that actually determines my style of play is the players themselves. And with a team full of great players, it's actually tough to pinpoint who the main star man is and how you can go about building a team around him. But in this team, we have a lot of great players, so I prefer to give them their preferred roles at the start to allow them to express themselves and not have any trouble playing different roles. As we continue to refine the tactic, we'll go ahead and create relationships between the players using those player roles. You can go to your squad list and sort out your players using their current ability star ratings, but what I like to do is to look at the potential ability star ratings, to look at any of those young players that I could be bringing into the team early and some of those other players that might need to go on loan. Once we identify who the top players are, we can go over to the positions column and try to figure out which positions in the team do we have the highest number of players with, where we actually have squad depth. You can use the squad planner to actually do this, and I think it's easier in a way, but the issue is you're going to have to create a tactic or a tactic template to actually help you view your squad using the squad planner. We're going to call this a proxy tactic. It's not our main tactic, it's just going to serve as a template for us to look at our team and go around building a system. Now we know who the best players are and we know which positions we have a lot of players in. What we need to do next is to identify our team's preferred playing philosophy. With the top team that is stacked with great players and good wonder kids that are coming through, you can play literally any style that you want. But what we want to figure out here is what our team cannot do. We're going to have to build a style of play that allows us to avoid doing that. For example, we may have a group of wonder kids centre backs that may not be the tallest, but they're very pacey, so there won't be any use going to sit in a deep block and inviting crosses because they're not going to head the ball, but they could play in the high line and play in high press and actually go ahead and hassle the opposition, and they will have enough speed to actually track back. So in order to identify what these strengths and weaknesses are, we can go over to the comparison tab. Here we can filter out every playing position and look at their attributes individually and see what they're good at and what they're not. You don't have to rush this phase. For me, this takes time, and this to me is the longest part of the tactic creation process. It is really important that you see what your players are good at and what they're not good at. And remember that the values that you're looking at this comparison tab is showing you an average value of each attribute for those players. So even when you're going ahead to pick your starting 11, you also have to look at the player that is playing the role. On average, the team may not have a good value for a particular attribute, but the individual player that is playing in that role will be able to have that attribute to execute the role. So you have to just look at all these things in detail and not just create a system that is set in stone and you don't have flexibility to change anything. So while you're looking at the average attributes, remember that you can uncheck those options so you don't have the attributes of other players actually affecting the one that you're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at the goalkeeper, and we're going to go ahead and uncheck the defenders, the midfielders, and the strikers, and then look at only goalkeeping attributes under goalkeeping. Here we can see what our goalkeeper is good at. Even though he's a super keeper, by attributes you can see that he doesn't have what we need to actually execute that particular role. So if we're playing super keeper, I would like it to be super keeper on defend and nothing more. If we try something on attack, it may just go ahead and have problems. You can do the same for your defenders and midfielders and strikers, and go ahead and uncheck every position that is not the one that you're looking at and just focus on those positions. I did make a video talking about this screen in detail and how you can use it to actually identify your playstyle. I'm going to put a link in the description so you can check out that video in case you need a little more info about this screen. Now, while combing through player attributes, you start to get ideas about what your team is good at. Like if your team has very good passing and very good decision making, it means they can actually play the ball quickly. It means that they can make decisions on the fly, so you don't have to worry about your teams making the wrong decisions, and then you can go ahead and ask them to do that. Whatever you go ahead to decide when you're looking at the comparison screen, whatever ideas pop into your head, just go over to your tactic screen and then put those tactical instructions into your proxy tactic. Now on the tactic screen, for a top team, in my opinion, the player rules are constantly changing game by game depending on the players that are actually playing on the field at that moment. If you're rotating a lot, the player that you bring in may not be able to play the role that he's seeing or the role that you selected before, so you might have to go ahead and tweak it. For me, in this Atletico Madrid save, I've decided that I actually want to play a simple attacking style of play. What that means for me is that I want my players to always play on the front foot, so they won't be too direct and they won't also force a possession-based style of play. It will be an attacking system that allows me to switch between possession football and direct attacking football whenever I want to without hurting the team's tactical familiarity. Now, because my team is so good, this template will be basic enough to allow me to rotate players and tweak rules without hurting the team. So now we have our players and we have an idea about our squad depth and which positions we have a lot of players in, and we also have an idea about the style of play that we want to use for our team. We can now adjust our formation to fit our players' preferred starting positions. Now I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not very hung up on formations when I have a very good team. I always like to experiment and rotate players and change formation because the AI tends to adapt very quickly, and when you have a lot of good players you can afford to be unpredictable. My first system here is going to be a 3-4-1-2 system. I'm also going to go ahead and create a copy of this system and make a slightly different shape that is a simple 4-3-3. You notice that the team instructions is the same for both the 3-4-1-2 system and the 4-3-3, only that I've made some minor tweaks to the player roles to allow different group of players to actually come in with a different role even though they are following the same team instructions and philosophy. This gives us a bit more flexibility when approaching games. I'm also going to have a third system that is basically just for fun. It's a 3-4-2-1 system where I'm using 2 attacking midfielders instead of 1. Now, since both of my systems are a back 3 system, I'm going to tell you one tiny flaw I've noticed about a back 3 even in real life and on Football Manager. Now, the back 3 can easily turn into a back 5 with only a few players up front to apply pressure. In order to avoid getting played through by good teams, I like to just drop the pressing line of engagement into a mid block. We're still going to retain our more often trigger press so that you can actually force your position to make mistakes when we get into the middle. This will compress the pitch in the midfield and allow us to win possession here rather than commit only a few players to the press. So there it is, my approach to creating a tactic for a team that is deep into the future in Football Manager. How would you create a tactic for your team 10 years into your Football Manager save? Let me know in the comments. And to learn more about the comparison tab and how you can use it to identify your playstyles, you can go ahead and watch this video next, and I'll see you in the next video.